Well, hello everyone. Welcome to LitRPG Audiobook Podcast. I am Ray, your humble reviewer. Today I will be reviewing some classic and up-to-date modernized versions of some LitRPG books for you. Now before I begin, I do want to let you all know that we do have more codes this time around. So if you want to, try and get them this time. I know a lot of people tried last episode. We had 6. We're going to cut back a little bit. I think we're going to have 3 codes this time, and maybe next show we'll have 3 more. And just to give you a heads up, my next show is going to be in the vein of Christmas. I hope you all have no problems with that. I'm a holiday person, so I'm going to have some fun with the Christmas spirit stuff. And next week will be my naughty special. What is the naughty special going to consist of? Consist of. Man, I just don't know what I'm talking about half the time. I ramble. Anyway, it consists of some really naughty stuff. Stuff that Santa would not be bringing you presents for. But it will be a nice gift to you as a listener. So I hope you look forward to that next week. Today, I'm going to be starting off my show with the video game Plotline Tester, Dark Herbalist Series Book 1, narrated by Eric Michael Summerer. It is written by Michael Adamanov, with a book length of 11 hours and 42 minutes.
Experience received, 8 experience. Object received, rat meat, food. Achievement unlocked, taste tester, 1 of 1,000. Racial ability unlocked, taste for blood, gives plus 1% to all damage dealt for each unique creature killed with vampire bite. Current bonus, 1%. Parameter unlocked, quenching the thirst, 10 of 15. I sat for a few long seconds, taking in the vile flavor of rat blood and digesting what had just happened in all senses of the word. Did this mean I was a vampire? I opened my character window to check, and it left me with no doubt on the matter. Race: Goblin Vampire. Fortunately, the second part of my race could be hidden simply by placing a check in a special field reading Hide from Other Players. I read the description of the vampire race and thanked the heavens and developers of the game that I could hide it. Minus 50 penalty to reaction of all living races if revealed. Penalty: legal target for murder by players and NPCs of living races if revealed. Penalty: cannot hide true nature when in the state thirst for blood. Penalty: instant death when hit by sunlight.
So, one of those little things that I really like is you get a fun book that just kind of puts the screws to the MC really fast early on. And this is one of those books where the aforementioned protagonist, he just gets beat to hell throughout the whole thing. He has no luck whatsoever. He ends up taking a job. His name is Timothy, as a video game tester. But he lies in order to get into the program. And we all know from those old TV commercials that would tell you what was wrong, and it was by the Church of the Latter-day Saints, way back when in the 80s. I don't know if you ever saw this commercial, but you tell one lie, it leads to another, then you tell 2 lies to cover the other, then you tell 3 lies, and soon you'll discover. Well, I won't go into the whole thing, but you get the idea that lying on your job application just isn't all that smart, right? Well, Timothy learns right away that his little fib, which was, have you ever played this game before? He says, he says no. This is a Russian book, but he says no. And what happened is his first character was killed rather swiftly by a vampire. This time around, as he goes into the game, that has some effects. It has some really big effects. Even though it was a short-lived stint, it's just more problematic because the killing by the vampire really jams him up in a certain way. Now, what he ends up doing is he gets into a competition with other gamers. There's only so many slots, and you're only going to be playing and getting paid for it for so long. The better you do, the longer you're in, and the more likely you're going to get a full-time gig. So he is competing with others, and he really doesn't have any choice in anything at all. He has no choice into what kind of character he's going to play. I do think he does have the option to give his character a name, if I remember correctly. But beyond that, he has no real options at all. They said, this is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to play. This is, this is it. You've got no choice. Take it or leave it, chump. And so he runs with it. And naturally, he ends up becoming a scruddly little goblin who just also happens to be afflicted by vampirism in his first go-round in the game. Now, not only is he a feeble little goblin, but he is a feeble little goblin with all the afflictions of a vampire. So that's a nice little twist, and I like that things do not go his way. Now, just so you know, his life back home is kind of messed up. He's got a sister who's housebound, and he pretty much plays to pay. In other words, he plays the game in order to earn money to pay for his rent and feed his sister and keep everybody alive and all that, which is a standard trope in these kind of game books. But that's how it goes. So I really had decided I was going to review this book because I'd already done one of the Reality Bender series, and I just learned that Michael Adamonov is going back to the series because I know book 3, and I haven't gotten that far yet. I do have it, just have not listened to it. It has a bit of a rough ending that people kind of flipped out about. And I'm hoping that whatever that is, and I think I have an idea, it'll be straightened out by book 4. I'm sure it will be, but you never know. But I'm looking forward to the rest of the series. I tried listening to it in the car, book 2, with my family, and usually they're really good with letting me, listen to whatever I want to. And they were having none of it. They didn't. I don't think they quite understood what the book was about. Like Bathrobe Night, we picked up right on it right away, and we ran with it. The kids enjoyed it. Here, it was just a little bit, they missed the first book, and so they didn't really have an idea of what was happening or who Timothy was, and so on and so forth. So I had to kind of stop, and then we went and listened to something else. And, so I haven't gotten very far into this series. It's not even as far as I have in Reality Benders, and I like this book. But I just haven't gotten a chance to get to it. So it's coming up. I'll get to these other books later on. I'll be getting to Reality Benders too. But what I like about this is that the game has pretty much an air of authenticity about it. If you listen to how the game is played in the book, I would say that is a real game. I would say that's an actual game that you can play. You just go pick up your console or hit your computer, and you would play this game. I think it would be a fun game to play. I always hear people say online, I'll see them on Facebook or whatever, and they'll say, hey, pick a book that you would like to see actually be a game, or pick a book you'd like to see it be a movie or whatever. This is not what I'd want to see played as a movie or TV show, but it is certainly one I would like to play as a gamer. I think it has a lot of appeal to it because the game is skill-based. And it looks to be that it wants players to be cooperative with one another. It kind of frowns on the PvP aspects of gaming, although it does allow it. And those people that kind of hunker down and wait for like newbies to come by to pounce on. That happens here, and that's one of those things that Timothy kind of gets surprised with. So there's a lot of reality to this game, and it, like, to me, it really comes across as being what will be a pretty fun game to play. So that's a big appeal to me. And like I say, it's skill-based rather than class, although he has classes in the game. But to me, it's more of a skill-based game. And I like those kind of games better than, like, the Wizard does this. I like to be able to tinker and have a big toolbox with my characters where I can do certain things. My kids are always trying to get me to come on and play certain things, certain games with them. And I'm like, no, this is not my style. I don't like to do this because I cannot pick and choose what I want my character to be able to do. And that's my favorite thing about gaming is, because I have like a lot of thief proclivities. I like to be able to sneak. I like to be able to pick pockets. I like to be able to do a lot of that stuff, but I also want to be able to cast magic and do a little bit of fighting. So, my class is kind of a multi-tool person, that's what I do. And that's what I think why I liked so much way back when with the original Daggerfall series. You could kind of create your own character. You could name your class and everything. And that was like really appealing to me. Here, it's pretty much the same thing. You might not get a choice into what race you're going to play, but you sure as heck can pick out what your skills are. And you get certain abilities as well. Now, Timothy does have his housebound sister join him in the game, and pretty much she's clearly the brains of the operation. What I liked about this story is that Timothy is rewarded not for doing run-of-the-mill stuff like grinding and making items. He kind of looks at the paradigm. I'm sorry, it's the paradigm. He looks at the paradigm and tries to get around it. You know what I mean? No, he tries to get out of the paradigm and do something that's a little bit different in order to, advance himself. He also gets a little extra for finding glitches, so he's on the lookout for some glitchy goodness. So there's a lot of things here that I think it has a lot of appeal. It's pretty fun. Now, one thing that I really like in books are Easter eggs, and Easter eggs that they don't just come out and say, "Hey, this is what I did. This is like, here's the thing." No, Easter eggs are fun, and it's good when it's shared between yourself and the author. And I think what Timothy's, what he said here was naming his character. When he was naming his character Amra, I pretty much had a geek spasm, because Conan the Barbarian has an alias that he used to use periodically when he was being like a pirate in Balit, and that was Amra the Lion. And I really hope this is a nod to Conan, because Amra seems to be the muscles of the operation. Not that he's got a lot of them, but that's his thing. And although I say his sister is the brains, that's really not a fair assessment, because Timothy often comes up with some off-the-wall way of doing things that really kind of advances him in some manner. So he is a thinker, and he's more of an outside-of-the-box thinker than he is anything else, but he's really like the strong arm of the duo, because he's the one that does all the heavy lifting 90% of the time. Although he does use his head, his sister has more knowledge about the game, is probably about the best way you could put it. But that's because she can cheat. She can get out and look up things that he can't do. So, I mean, there's that. I mean, it's just one of those things where he does what he can, but she's there to back him up and keep him covered. Now, I think one of the more fun things is as a vampire, he has different abilities. And I think my favorite ability that he has is called Taste Tester. And that's basically where if he kills something and drinks its blood, each time he does that to a unique creature, he gets a little bit more power. It's like a 1% boost to his strength or power, or killing abilities or whatever it is. And so he basically goes on this mini rampage over time trying to find things that he can kill and drink the blood of, just so he can increase that ability. And I think that was one of the more fun aspects of the game itself, just because, he gets a 1% bonus for each bit of new blood he puts in his palate. And that's something you don't see. I've never seen that in another game, and I like new stuff. Additionally, I like the way the stats were used to demonstrate capabilities in the game. For example, the first time that Timothy or Amra tries to speak as the goblin, everything kind of comes out as gibberish or childish gobbledygook. It's like, "Me say, don't moi," that kind of stuff. He's trying to get a point across, but it's very basic English. It's almost like Jar Jar Binks, but not quite that stupid, if that helps, because no one wants to talk like Jar Jar Binks. No one. But yeah, you get the idea. It's if your intelligence is greater or your charisma is better or your, same way strength. If you're weak, you can't lift things. And this is really a smart way to do that. So even though he knows what he's saying or what he wants to say, his words don't quite come out the way he hopes. And that's a nice thing. And I think I said that too with the Completionist Chronicles recently. There was a thing with the one chiropractor character who has like a really low charisma score. And that affects his gameplay throughout the entire book. And it's not until really towards the end of it that they figure out this is what the cause is why he says what he says and why he behaves the way he does. And it's the same thing here. He has an ability score that's low, and it affects his speech with other people. And that was a nice touch. I really think that, if you're going to do something like that, this is the place to do it, because it adds a lot of authenticity to the game. But you get my idea. Now, the story is basically just really about how he is trying to keep his job as a tester, not get discovered as being a vampire, and doing the average game things like leveling up and getting stronger. I thought it was a nice touch to give him a home base that was haunted, and give it a mystery about what was doing the haunting. And I had a few snickers when he was showing the tribe his powers, so to speak, in his quest for love, so if you want to go there. If you want to know some of the bad things, there are a few plot holes that do crop up, such as Amra having or using items that you had no idea he had. They just kind of appear. The story also, to me, it just kind of felt like he was wandering around trying to figure things out. And I really, really, really need to have a book that has a beginning, a middle, and an end to it. I can't have, how do I put it? I can't have just anything happening. I have to have something to show me, where we're going. I need signposts, and after those signposts, I need to have some sort of resolution. And that's a big issue with me and with a lot of books. And I'll say this, I'll kind of call it out with like Daniel Shinofin's book, The Apocalypse Gates. It's a slice of life book, and it's just kind of basically the characters just kind of go from here to there, and everything happens in between. And there is no real, this is what's going to happen, then this comes up, and then finally we get to this point. And I think that is an issue I have with it, and I kind of have to get over that, because not every story has to have the setup and then the conflict and then the resolution. That's my preference, and that's what I like. And here, you don't really have that. It's kind of like just him going around doing this and that and the other thing and figuring things out as he goes. So, to me, it just kind of needs a little bit more to kick it into gear. And I didn't like how, it was like that. I tried to keep, building of tension and climax. So that was sort of a, like I say, let's see what will happen kind of approach. And that's too lackadaisical for me. Now, Eric Michael Summerer, try saying that really fast. Summerer. Summerer, who you may recognize from work he's done like on Dodge Tank, really elevates the book. I have enjoyed him, honestly, since I first heard him do some Forgotten Realms books way back in 2013. And if you really want to hear him do some amazing stuff, aside from Dark Herbalist or Dodge Tank, go and find those and give those a listen. It's a game world. It may not be, gamers in the game world, but it's a game world nonetheless. And it's a neat little set of series of books that he does. But I do think he's grown better as he's gone on. And, Dodge work is just impeccable. That work is just amazing. Here he carries his story along quite nicely. I'm very happy with what he does with it. I think that it was in very good hands. And I actually look forward to hearing him again in the future, both on Dodge Tank and in the next two books of the series. Even the third, the fourth book, I should say, because I was going to say the third one's coming out. So the fourth book. Now, even though I just said a lot of praise, my final score may seem a little wonky, but I'll explain why. Final score is 7.8 stars. It was good, but I did find it nearly aimless in its execution. There were just some plot holes that popped up. Like I said, it could have been fixed. And it seems like Amra really lucks his way out of more stuff than he should. Either way, I like the book, but it's a 7.8 stars. I think if the plot holes had been kind of filled in and made to be a little bit less explicit, that might have helped. And again, I do need a little bit more in the story to kind of say, here's where we're at and here's where we're going. This was just kind of like wander, done. And that is not something I really sink my teeth into. I'm just kind of like, yeah, there's the end. Okay, so that was really why I gave it a 7.8. If it had like a really solid middle and then a climax, do I want to say climax like that? If it has a really nice resolution at the end of it, fantastic, because that's what I need. I need a nice solid resolution to complete the book and let me know that it's closed out and we can move on to the next thing. And again, it does kind of have that, but it's mostly just a lot of wandering around. So it was a 7.8 stars for me, but it's a really good book. It's a really good series. Has an excellent narrator, so I highly recommend it to you all. 7.8 stars. All right, next up is our sound booth spotlight, which is Sigil Online, Paragons. It's written by Jeff Sproul, narrated by Jeff Hayes, with a book length of 9 hours and 23 minutes.
The ground trembled beneath their feet. Everyone looked down, but there was no time to react. The ground pushed up from below them and then broke as a large glowing maw rose into the chamber. A loud guttural groan emanated from the creature's mouth. Its hide was a translucent, bulging green. Its maw was made up of triangular flaps that opened up to a plethora of tiny green spike-like teeth. "Spread out!" Glasser yelled. Shadow and Blue were already moving in separate directions. Rady had been knocked to the ground and was crawling for several moments before Warcry reached down and hoisted him up by the arm. "Up you go! Thanks!" Rady called as he turned and ran so that he could put distance between him and Warcry, if the worm came for either of them. He looked over, noticing the worm's attention wasn't on any of them currently. It seemed to be surveying its surroundings. "Glasser! I need the mirror!" "I know!" Glasser called back from a distance away.
So, pretty much like I said, this is going to be the sound booth spotlight for this episode, even though it's really Jeff's baby. But Jeff is sound booth. I mean, let's be honest about it. He's the guy behind it. And I want to kind of go back and just kind of spotlight a few things that he's done in the past before he was SBT, because he's come a long way. And this is one of those things where I want to kind of showcase this week so that next week's book you'll understand what I'm talking about. Paragons is a really good intro into the superhero MMO. Now, I do have some issues with it, and there are ones that always seem to appear in this genre with a superhero thing, but not always, but it just seems like it always comes up. Usually it's the LitRPG stuff that drives me crazy, and here it's going to be, first, it has rules that makes it impossible for me to believe that this would be the most popular game in the world. Basically, they're asking me to act like I'm watching a movie. I need to suspend my disbelief. And I have a problem, with a book that does something along the lines of what it does here, where it says, if your character dies, you have to restart your game from scratch. No one would play a game like that, no matter how great it was, no matter how realistic it was, unless it gave you a screaming O every time you entered or exit the game. You'd never play it, because you could spend 10 months building a character up, kitting them out, and doing everything else, and one false move, and wham, you're back to being a noob, and you got to start all over again. No fun if your character dies. And the other thing is that no matter what happened in this book, when you restarted, you didn't get to pick what powers you were going to get. You didn't get to know when you were going to get your powers, and you didn't get to name your character. And again, I'm going to say, I don't even know what to say here. This is like saying, okay, you're going to play World of Warcraft, and the first thing you're going to do is you're going to become a human, okay? And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to ride out of the city gates, go out into the wilds, and figure out who you are. And I just don't see that being like a game I would want to play. Like you go out there and you do a lot of crap, and then you find out, hey, you're going to be a paladin this time because you found the holy sword of Shembrelel. So you're a paladin, and your name is now Joe the Paladin. And who wants to be called Joe the Paladin? Nobody, Joe the Paladin. It doesn't make sense to me. And that's what they do here, is that it's kind of like, you've got to stick with this name. You've got to stick with this power. And if you don't like it, kill yourself and go back and restart all over again. And you may be 3 weeks into the game or 3 months into the game before you get your next set of powers, which you may not like then. It might be worse than what you have now. So it's kind of like, just suck it and go with it. And that, to me, is just, I just don't think about I would ever play that. A third, there was just, the randomization just gets me. But I can't do the restart. I can't do any of the other stuff. Like I said, and you get no multiple characters. You cannot set up like an alt in any way, shape, or form. So, if you can't do a backup character or anything like that, or swap characters out, I mean, as much as, I'm sure you guys play WoW, and again, I'm going to go back to this because my wife is a big WoW fan. We played it together for a while, and she still plays more than I ever will. She's got so many, uber level maxed out characters that she can swap out whenever she gets bored, or somebody says, hey, we need a healer, can you bring Remedy over? She brings Remedy over. Or if we need a fighter, can you do this? She's got it set up where she can help her guild out with any number of characters that they're going to need. Here, you couldn't do that. And again, I keep going back to, it might be great to be Superman, but it can also be fun to be Batman. I want to be grim and gritty for a little while and have some vulnerabilities. And you can't do that in this game. Now, again, I'm sounding like I'm beating this book up, and I'm not. I'm just saying there's certain things that get under my skin. Just like one of the things here they do as well is the trope where there is a dedicated news channel to the events in the game. And I have often said, and I think I'll say it for every single book that I ever read with this, that to me is just not real. I don't care how big a game gets. They might have it on YouTube. They might have a lot of channels on YouTube that are dedicated to certain things or certain players or whatever. But it's never going to be a mainstream TV thing, ever. Ever, ever, ever. And again, there's too many ways. Like, you play WoW. I'm going to go back to WoW again. WoW has so many various... I can't even think right now. Sorry, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning when I'm recording this. But there's different, oh my gosh, you get into the game and you'll want to swap out and go to a different section of the game. I can't think of it right now. I'm having such a meltdown on my brain. You want to log out and go somewhere else. You can't do that here. So, there, if you did this, every single, section of the game, every 14,000 sections would have to have something happening and would have to be reported on. And it just doesn't seem plausible to me. It just does not seem plausible at all that, as you go into one part of the game and your friends are playing on a completely different server, there you go, they're on servers. Which server you're on, is the one that makes the news. There's thousands of servers. There's hundreds of servers, whatever it's going to be. It just doesn't really sync up with my way of thinking. And again, I could be wrong. I've said before, I don't believe that, there's ever going to be a point where game players are going to be on par with like real sports athletes. And I could be completely wrong on this. I've been told, oh, well, they do this in this country and they do that in this country. That's fantastic. But I will never believe that somebody's going to be as popular as, Michael Jordan, so to speak. Never. No, there's no way there's going to be a gamer that's as popular as Michael Jordan. No matter what you do, you cannot convince me of that. Now, honestly, that's the bad stuff, and it's just me nitpicking. Yep, it drives me nuts, but that whole bunch of stuff I just said is needed to drive the plot forward. So what I had to do was, I really had to step back and put on a fresh set of ears and listen without those prejudices. The book centers on a guy named Riley, who just happens to be one of the best players in the game, until his character is killed and he has to start fresh. And of course, he doesn't know what his powers will be or when he'll get them, like I said. And so he kind of struggles going around trying to go into dangerous situations that will put him into jeopardy that might, cause him to mutate or give him some sort of powers. And so he basically, as he's doing this, he does, for some bizarre reason why he didn't do this the first time he played the game, he begins to kind of make friends and become a team player because he learns to play well with others finally. And that's because he didn't do it earlier. He was kind of a douche in the game, so to speak, his first character. No one really liked him, and he's really surprised to find out that everybody thought he was kind of a D-bag, which is kind of weird because I think you would know if you're well-loved or not, excuse me, but he didn't have a clue, and so, this time around, he's doing things to kind of improve himself, not only as a player, but as a person. He kind of realizes he kind of, Shaft's his best friend sometimes, and he has friends online that he has to take care of now. So there's a lot of character development in this tale, and he's a likable guy in spite of what everybody seems to think at the beginning of the book, and he gets to be more likable. The book itself has a much more definitive Marvel over DC vibe if you're into comic books. The characters are kind of more Marvelish than DC, and that's just the way it goes. I mean, it's one of those things where you can kind of pick, this is the Spider-Man character, this is the Captain America style, so on and so forth, and they don't beat you over the head with it, but you can definitely see like these people would have been just at home with the Avengers as opposed to the Justice League, and I think that's just because of power scale. Marvel superheroes are always more down to earth and relatable in their abilities, even though, the Hulk can lift 300,000 tons or whatever, as opposed to Superman moving a planet. There's not really much difference in the overall scheme of things, but Superman's more powerful, and so you go there. These people are more down to earth in their powers and abilities. And I do think that Riley gets a really cool set of powers. And as they evolve, he gets to have a lot more fun with them. So I think that he actually does better the second time around than what he did the first. Even though his character was great in the first incarnation, his second character is way better in my opinion. So just keep that in mind. Like I said, I was kind of really beating up on a couple things, but the book is really fun. It's really fun. And again, I'm not trying to hurt Sproul at all. I want to make it really clear. The book has the real feel of superhero to it. I mean, I never once walked away going, this doesn't feel like I'm, reading a comic book. It really does. I didn't walk away saying this could never, be seen in the MCU. It does feel like it could be. It's got the superhero stuff down cold, and it is really fun. I enjoyed it. I especially liked the different characters, their powers, their names. Even though they weren't picking these things, it was made fun. I mean, there's one character who rolls dice and, like the 20-sided die. That was a cool ability. That was like a really cool concept. And that is really what I look for when I'm reading these kind of books, superhero stuff, is where is the originality at? And this is it. I mean, the characters in this game and their guild building and all that, they're really, really... excuse me, I don't know where I'm coughing all of a sudden. They're really, really on par with, something Stan Lee would have created. And it was really enjoyable. I really liked it a lot. Now, as always, Jeff Hayes, he kind of knocks this out of the park with his vocal ministrations. And I did say ministrations and not ministries. I don't worship Jeff Hayes. That spot is reserved for Stevie Nicks, the goddess. Stevie. All hail Stevie. All hail Stevie. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, Jeff really kind of goes to town with his vocalizations and really adds personality to each character, big and small. I mean, there's no character that doesn't get some sort of, I can point them out, like, this is the crabby guy, and this is a snivelly guy. It's all right there. You get to pick it up, and you know exactly who's who just from what he's doing. This is a top-notch performance, and I really can't say much more than that. Now, I do think after listening to Planet Kill, which is next week's spotlight, I think that you'll see that when the next book in this series comes out, that Jeff Hayes will have a bigger arsenal to add to the sound of this book, the feel of this book. This is the place that I want to hear laser blast and giant footsteps and explosions, and scrunching of, aliens' heads and that sort of thing. I think that would be really great for this series because there's a lot of potential here. And I know Jeff Hayes can pull this off because Planet Kill was just amazing with the sound effects that it did. It just knocked things out of the park on that level. And here, I think this series would really benefit from that because, as it says, let's just say Gazer Beam from The Incredibles appears and, Gazer Beam shoots his blast and you hear whatever it's going to be. That will just add to the flavor of the book. And I think it would really, really be awesome. So you'd have Jeff doing the voices plus the sound effects. This series would kill, totally kill. So basically, all in all, there were a few game mechanics issues that I had, but it's a really good story with interesting characters. And I say this is easily a very fun 8 stars on the Richter scale. Yep. Like I said, there are issues, but those are minor issues. Really. I mean, these are my issues, not the book's issues. I'm sure there's 1,000 of you out there who love the fact that there's a news station dedicated to a video game, and that, it's really cool that you only have like one character at a time in the game. To me, it doesn't fit, and so I can't go much higher than 8. I enjoyed this book a lot, and I don't want you to even come close to thinking I didn't like it. This was an awesome, awesome story. My issues are mine, but I have to be right honest with you. Because of them, I can't rate the book as high as I would like to. But Sproul really knows how to write, and he knows how to create characters. And there is a ton of character development in this book. Riley really goes through a ringer and comes out a completely different person at the end. So, like I say, that was my issue with everything. You should probably enjoy this way more than I did, just because you probably don't have those problems that I go through when I listen to this sort of stuff. 8 points. Spot on. So the next book I'm going to be doing is Puatera Online, Book 6, known otherwise as Dahlia's Shadow. It is written by 2 people, Don Chapman and Jess Mountfield, narrated by Susan Barbetta, with a book length of 3 hours and 15 minutes.
I raced to the markings on the floor, arriving a split second after my twin sister Lila, giggling. Ever since Mom had told us about Puatera Online, we'd talked about playing it, and now was our chance. It wouldn't hurt to play for a little while, would it? After all, they were about to open it up for the next 100 people. We could visit the world, stay for a few hours, and still get home in time for bed. Mom would never even know. My big sister, Jessica, was just behind us, stripping down to her underwear and getting ready to play as well. It only made me giggle harder as Lila and I stepped onto the footprint shapes on the floor. Almost immediately, the system reacted, lifting us into the air somehow, as snake-like arms rose out of holes that hadn't been there seconds before. There was a sting in the back of my neck. I winced right before the sedative coursed through me, relaxing my tense muscles.
Well, very sadly, Don Chapman brings us one more step closer to the end game for her Puatera series. And as I think the next book kind of reunites us finally with Maddie the MC, at least I hope so. I think that, she's going to show up in the last book with a big part. I don't want cameos or anything like that. I want her to have a big, significant part. So hopefully she's there. One of the things I love about this series is that while it's got action, it also has a lot of emotion. It's really got heart, and I never feel like it's spinning its wheels. There is always this forward motion, and the story never stops or slows down. And up until now, we've just been getting puzzle pieces, and each piece has a nice shape, and it's interesting, and it weaves a much bigger picture and lets you kind of let the pieces fall in place, and you get to see, the whole thing. And we're just missing a couple pieces left for this final story arc. And I have to say that this is like, I think there's one more book about a sister. The story of the sisters has been a really fun ride. I've enjoyed it, and I think that, anybody who has read the series really likes it. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, I just can't read that or listen to the Puatera series. Everybody I've ever heard anything about this has spoken nothing but really, really highly of this series. So there were a couple things that I want to say I really liked about this book. First, we stayed with a 3-hour format, which has been in the case of all the books except for the Aquila's Range, book 4, which was a 9-hour book. And it was understandable that she did that because it really broke away from the first 3 books of the series, which they were each 3-hour books. And this was a kind of a nice way to say, boom, we're going in a new direction now. There's a lot to say, a lot to do, a lot to get through. So we're going to go and do the full length for this book that we did for the first 3 books, which was nice. And it kind of made a nice bookend because you had 3-hour books for the first section and then that one. So you got a nice 1, 2, 3, boom, different set of books with this. So I also love the glitch factor in this game. You don't see that very often in many LitRPG books to the degree where, glitches give stitches here. But in Puatera, it's just par for the course. And I also have to say that Chapman and Montefield have really woven an intricate and detailed world for these characters to play in. What I think I liked best was Dahlia's struggle was she really had to find a way to shine on her own. Even though, she is a twin, she's kind of skulked back in the shadow of her sister for some time. And it's a place where she really is comfortable being, and she's never tried to be her own person or to do things for herself. Her time in Puatera forces her to stand up for herself and actually take control and accountability in her life for herself for the first time. And this, my people, is how you write character development. And it's pretty impressive. And just how much character growth that this pair of writers manages to get out of Dahlia in just over 3 hours time. I mean, it's not a lot of time. The book is pretty short, 3 hours, and boom, it's done. And there's a lot of things that happen in that 3 hours for Dahlia to go from being a 0 to a hero. It's incredible. And I really give Dawn Chapman a lot of credit because, again, she really infuses this story with heart and emotion, and it comes across that way, but it's not overwhelming. It's not like as a guy I go, oh, this story's so soppy and just, meh. I get into this just as much as I do with, something like Planet Kill, where they're out just, blowing people up and having sex. This is like one of those things where it's a thinker, but it's also enjoyable, and it's also emotional, and it's also got action. So, it's got a lot of aspects to it. Now, I'm trying really hard not to go into spoilers because it's a 3-hour book, and I don't want to give things away, and I'll try to do that with her other stuff too, is not to go too far into detail with anything, just because I don't want to spoil anything you're going to get. I mean, it's like, I'm almost like trying not to be the trailer for a big movie where they show all the really awesome scenes, and then you get to the movie and you're like, I've seen pretty much everything except for the crappy stuff in between here. And I don't want to do that to you because this is a really good book, but it's short. So if I cover something, it's going to be a big spoiler for about a third of the book or half the book right away. I might be able to say like in the end here, when I go and do my Is It Lit RPG, I could tell you in the tower, this is what happens to Corin, and spoil only like a fraction, because it's a huge book. It's 22 hours long, a fraction of the story, and it wouldn't hurt it at all. Here, if I give you a little bit more than a hint, I'm giving you a whole lot of stuff that happens, and I don't want to do that. So I kind of have to ease back some and say, here's what this book did to me, and it will do to you. And the series is the same way. The whole thing from beginning to end has that same feel. Like I said, I know Dawn kind of picked up a writing partner towards the end of the series, but they mesh really, really well together, and they get their points across, and it's got its own voice. It does. It really does. Now, I mean, I can't tell you that I can't tell, Dawn's writing as opposed to Dawn's writing with a partner, because the first 3 Puatera books were probably, and still will be, my favorites in the series. But that's because I really have an affinity towards the main character, Maddie, a lot. And I've been just dying to see her just show up and do things. And I keep getting told, it's going to happen in the last book, so just take a breath. Okay, so I'm taking a breath, and I'm waiting. But just so you know, I'm pretty much trying to keep you in the know without giving you any information, if that helps you at all. Now, Suzanne Barbetta returns here for another stab at the Puatera universe, and she really brings her A game. She makes the story interesting and very fun, but at the same time, she lets you realize that Dahlia is in danger, and that at any moment a glitch is going to cause her to have some serious problems. The only umbrage that I took with her work is that she very clearly made Jessica have a very completely different voice in the last book, and style, I must add, than she did in this book. And it really kind of threw me off. And I wanted to stop and go back and listen to the last book before I finished this one, but I didn't. I waited until I finished, and then I double-checked, and I was right. Jessica has a much more distinctive voice comparatively. And I don't know if it's because Dahlia and Jessica have very, very similar voices in the first book, the last book, I should say, and she was trying to distance herself from that. Like, she didn't want to be too close to the other. But, I mean, if you look at it, they're sisters, so there's going to be a lot of overlap on how their voices sound. Not very often, but, my brothers and I can probably do really good impressions of each other. So it's not very often where you have siblings of the same sex whose voices don't have like the same kind of cadence and timbre and tone and that sort of thing. I think that having them be neck and neck, where you might want to say, I could barely pick them out, that's really the way it would be. But again, I didn't like that she switched the voices. I'm one of those people that say, when you start something, stick with it. Even if you said, I didn't like how that turned out, don't go swapping, because it drives me crazy. That's like one of those, like, my biggest no-nos in the world is start with a narrator, and unless that person is absolutely the worst narrator in the world, and I won't name that person, but I've done a couple reviews of them, and I know that if they were in any way, shape, or form involved with the book, just say scrap it and start over again. This is not that case. She does a really good job, but she needs to just stick with what she did before, because it pops my ears out sometimes. And I really don't like that kind of stuff. I'm very consistent in how things should be. I don't know if it's because I'm OCD or if I'm autistic or what it is, but that's my son. Both my sons are autistic, and they both have to have things done a certain way. And I'm probably 99% responsible for why they're the way they are. So I'm sure I've got that going for me. Great. So I don't like change. I really don't. And that was kind of like a little wonky to me. But I mean, again, I'm nitpicking. I'm nitpicking. There you go. Nitpicking an otherwise excellent job. Suzanne did do a great job. I'm just nitpicking what she did, because it kind of threw me off, and I had to stop and rewind, so to speak, just to make sure I hadn't lost my mind. Now, one more thing that I find is usually that books that are 4 hours and under in length are not as good as I would generally hope they would be. If you look at some of my reviews, if it's like 4 hours or less, I don't know what it is, but they tend to be like my 4, 5s, and 2s and 3s for reviews. And that's not the case here at all. Chapman, and I'm giving her the credit here since she's the one that started the series and did so in 3-hour increments, knows how to write an excellent short story. I didn't give a lot away on this. Like I said, it's pretty short. So I don't want to reveal a whole lot of crap. I'm playing it close to the vest and not giving any kind of specifics just to avoid spoilage. But she knows how to write short stories that not only entrance, but also entertain. And that's the important thing. She keeps you on the trail and makes you interested as things go. So, for a book that has a nice pace, a solid foundation, excellent character growth and development, a cool ending that leads us into the final book of the series, and an excellent narrator, what am I going to do? I'm going to say all this is a solid 8.2 stars. I'm really looking forward to the next book in the series, even though I'm really saddened to see it come to a close. And I hope that Maddie gets like one more big book out of this, Dawn. I don't know if you listen to these or not, but man, after this is all over with, give Maddie like a big 9-hour book. She needs it. But I know you want to do other stuff too. But come back to Maddie and give her one really big, fun 9-hour book. Just because. You can break that little path off and go that way. But yep, this is a good book. 8.2 stars. I really look forward to the next. Thank you. So today, I know I told you last week I was going to do a what else have they done, but I want to save that for next week's naughty special, just because it fits in a little bit better here. So today, for my Is It Lit RPG or Not, I'm going to be reviewing Sufficiently Advanced Magic by Andrew Rowe, narrated by Nick Podell, and it has a book length of 21 hours and 58 minutes. So it's almost a full day of listening, guys.
The door vanished behind me, of course. I pondered the significance of the door's color for a moment. Was the golden gem just representing a more challenging version of the same style of room? Or maybe these colors had some sort of cultural significance. The room could represent the tyrant in gold, for example. If it did, I was probably in a great deal of trouble. I carefully inspected the floor before I made my way forward. The square-shaped grid wasn't present here, and I didn't see any runes or indentations. There were, however, 4 small grates in the corners of the room. They looked inert for now, but I didn't like the look of them. The Valor board was the most obvious set piece for a puzzle. I ignored it and headed straight toward the 3 doors in the back of the room, green, gold, and orange, just like the last room. I didn't know how many rooms I'd have to complete in total, but I did plan to stick with gold unless I saw a good reason to switch, especially if I could skip the puzzle entirely.
This is one of those books that I've heard a ton of people saying that it had a lit RPG feel to it. In fact, this is the book that inspired my idea to do this segment in the first place, because I would be looking for books, on Amazon or on Audible and looking at comments where people said this book is great or whatever. If I look for that, like especially on Facebook, people say this book was fantastic. I look for that, and usually that's where I look at is on Facebook. I look to see, what they're saying about it. And a lot of people said, this book feels like it's a lit RPG book. It just made me think lit RPG all the way start to finish. So I thought, well, hell, if that's one book, I'm sure there's a lot of books out there that have that feeling to them. And, that you could kind of push the boundaries a little bit. And even though it's maybe not lit RPG, that you would probably still enjoy it because it's got that flavor to it. So this was what really made me think about this for a while. Yeah, I know I was about 20 shows in before we started doing this. And this was the book that made me think about it. Now, I didn't do it first because once I had the idea, I asked for suggestions, and several other books popped up that really kind of were pushed on me because people said, this really is close to being that. And I said, great. I will review that because you've asked me to. But I've always had this book in mind for this segment. This was my number 1 draft pick, so to speak. Now, the book opens with a young man named Corin, who is about to take a life-altering test. He comes from a famous noble house that is renowned for its fighting abilities. The test itself is extremely life-threatening, and he can die if he doesn't fight well enough or isn't smart enough to solve the various puzzles that is contained therein. And there's puzzles and monsters, traps, and just straight up, murder, kill hobos that come through to, get you. And he has to kind of figure his way through the whole thing. Now, of course, he makes it through, because if he died, it wouldn't be much of a story about him. But he does, but not in the way that he expected or in a manner that pleases his father. And that's really important because he's instantly demoted in the family ranking, and his half-sister, who's a result of his father getting it on with somebody other than his wife, gets pushed up as the family heir. So, she's the heir now, and from there, he's got to deal with that. They go to school, because after you pass your tower test, you then go to school for 2 years, and then you join the military for 2. So, the thing is going through the tower, you're supposed to acquire at least 1 attunement. And an attunement is basically your school of magic. There's summoners, there's fighters, and he gets the enchantment school. And that's like the lowest school. It's just above healers. No one that has any kind of respect for healers. Well, it's like healers are here and enchanters are just barely above those folks. So his dad's really PO'd that he got the enchanter thing, and he really feels it's because poor, Corin is a coward. So whatever he did in the tower was cowardly. Well, it really wasn't. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen in the tower that really kind of screwed him over. And I think that, honestly, I think the enchanter ability, which is where you kind of just give magic to items, is probably the most powerful ability you could have. And I think that in the long run, as the series goes on, you will see that, he's going to go from being a nobody into being probably one of the most powerful players in the whole world, so to speak. Now, what Corin, what he really wants to do is get strong enough to find out what happened to his older brother, who, Tristan, who never came back from his tower test. Everybody believes he's dead except for Corin. Now, again, this is kind of an oversimplification of things, and things happen in the tower, like I say, that impact the rest of the novel. Like Corin freeing 3 prisoners, angering an aspect of their goddess, and he gets the weakest attunement. So all of those things kind of play into one another for the whole rest of the book. Now, I have to admit that the book really felt like it was going to be another Harry Potter. So, pardon me while I vomit. Okay, I'm back. I hate Harry Potter, and I didn't want to have a Harry Potter ripoff. I did not need that, and that's really the way the book felt to me for the first bit. And you got to realize this is a long book; it's 22 plus hours, so there's a lot that goes on before you ever get into the meat of the story, so to speak. There's a lot of setup that goes on here, because we get to see Corin make friends, struggle with other students, struggle to learn about his magic. And for a little while, it comes across because we get as a Hogwarts, because we attend his classes with him and learn about the magic system. But gradually, as this happens, we get to see the intrigue start to build, and things happen that pulls us back to that tower over and over again. We get to see, Corin improving his magic, but it doesn't play out like you expect. And that's one of those things that I really love about this book, was that what you think is going to come up doesn't happen that way. So like I say, one of his instructors tells him he needs to get to a certain color level of attunement, and they go by colors. It's the Roy G. Biv scale, red, orange, yellow. So they have a thing, and they're like, you've got to get to orange to yellow before the last 3 months of school if you plan on being able to survive in this tower and do this. And he's like, he makes a silent vow to himself. Well, if I've got to do that within the next 3 months, I can get there within this week. By the end of this week, I'm going to be to that level. And nope, he doesn't even come close to fulfilling that vow. And I think that that's the realistic part of this book that I enjoyed the most, is because Corin, as good as he is in not quitting and being, he really struggles and fights with a lot of stuff to succeed. He shoots for the moon, and 99% of the time, his arrow never comes close to touching it. So, he reaches for those stars. He is, Don Quixote. He is dreaming the impossible dream. He wants to, fight the unbeatable foe, and he does that several times, and he doesn't win because they're unbeatable. So he has that never say die attitude, and he gives himself these goalposts that he can never make, but he doesn't see that. He doesn't see it every single time he does it. He doesn't realize he's never going to get there. And I think that eventually, by book 2, somewhere in there, he's going to start hitting those things. He's going to start really rapidly advancing and getting some strength. But in this book, no, he is the weakness of the team. He is the weakest link. But the book does set you up to expect a lot out of him. And he does come through, just not in the ways that he expects or other people expect. Now, I think the only time the book actually became predictable to me was in the tower itself. And I pretty much called every single twist or turn that happened, but not because it was easy to see. I kept saying to myself, if I was writing this story, this is what I would do here. And then that pretty much happened. And that only worked because I'm a deeply twisted, troubled individual. Now, the story is long, but it's a worthwhile trip. And I will most likely get the next book in the series. It really caught my interest. It has a nice ending that leads into the next book. It has a nice reveal as to what may have happened to his brother Tristan. And, not everybody comes out of the tower unscathed. There is a lot of stuff that occurs in the tower that, like, when it's all said and done with, the team that goes in is not the same team that comes out. It's one of those things that, yeah, there are injuries that are sustained that cannot be avoided, and they're not easily fixable, not in this world. So it's the way it is. It's the way of the world. Now, Podell is amazing. He pulls voices out that I haven't heard him do before, and he really hits a nice stride with the pacing of the story. And I have to say, I know a lot of times people will talk about Nick Podell. I have not really been in love with him as a narrator. I think he's always done like a really good job, but I've never been like, man, he's right there with Hayes and Daniels. And in this book, I think he really upped his game a whole hell of a lot. He hits this really nice stride with the pacing of the story, like I said. And I think my favorite voice is of his upstairs, Corin's upstairs dorm mate, who seems to be a ninja. The accent that he uses is, if you've ever watched The Big Bang Theory, it is 100% right down to the wire. I would say it was him doing this voice, but it's Raj from Big Bang. Like, my wife and I will watch that show, and he hits that voice so perfectly. Not that he doesn't do other voices as well, but I mean, he hits Raj so well that it fits the character. It really fits that character. And I snickered every time he did that voice because it was just so good. I was like, man, I can listen to him do that voice all day long. Not that he wasn't knocking all the other ones out of the park, but again, he elevated himself way higher than I expected. He does a lot of good stuff, and I do know he's a good narrator, but he's never been like one of my, I just love Nick Podell. I've always been like, Nick Podell's he's a good guy, he's a good narrator. Here, he really ups the game. I mean, I was like, wow, I can see what everybody else has been saying for a long time. Maybe my ears just got cleaned out and I'm enjoying it more. I don't know. But it was very nice to hear him do this story because it was so good. Now, this is the part where we get down to the nitty gritty. Is this lit? Is it close to it? Is it not at all? Well, without much suspense, I'm going to say this book is not even close. Nowhere near it. While it was fun and interesting, and it had great characters, the only part to me that even made it have a whiff of lit RPG was in the way in which Corin leveled up his abilities, and even that was a bit sketchy for a lit book. It just did not have that feel. It was more about practice and control than it was about fighting or gaining XP. The only way you can gain abilities is either by having one of the aspects of a god grant them to you, which they're not going to do that unless you're in the tower in the first place, or you somehow luck into finding them by walking around, which that does not happen in the book. So you can't just gain new powers. You've got to go into the tower and earn them. There's no way you get more powerful except for practice and training and just developing yourself every second of every day. And the practice and control part really says fighting things is not as essential. Now, you could say, yes, they've got to go out and learn how to fight and execute their moves and that sort of thing. And that's true, that you would get stronger doing that. But it was more about application and technique, which you throw yourself into that. But most of that was not necessary for fighting. A lot of those characters, like with him, he's basically a guy who engraves sigils onto something and then pumps it full of mana. So it has mana use as well. But that's pretty much it. Otherwise, like there is leveling to a certain extent. There is a level system. And there's mana use. Beyond that, nope, nothing else. I just, I have to say I was really disappointed by this assessment. And I'm the one that made it because I was really hoping that this book was going to be the one that was a lot closer than any other one out there. But Alack and Alas is not even close in my mind. Still, it's a fun ride, and I really suggest if you're looking for something close to Lit, as you might find it, you can find it interesting. I'm not going to score this because it is only is it Lit RPG or not, and so I'm going to just do it from this point forth. I'm not going to score the is it lit anymore. I think it's only going to be is it lit, yes or no, and I'm going to say no, it's not Lit RPG. So it's a great book. You don't want to miss it, and it would have a high score because it was so fun. And Podell really pulls out all the stops on this. It's got a lot of bang for your buck because it's 22 hours. So one credit will buy you a full day of listening, nonstop, and that's pretty much how I got through it. It was almost one full day, and I had a little bit of break. I had about 6 hours that I had to go back in the next day and finish up with. But it was a good book. It was a really good book. It was fun, but it's not Lit RPG. Sorry, guys. Well, thank you ever so much for watching us, everyone. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch or listen to the show. And, I really want you to help support us. So if you like the LitRPG Podcast Facebook page or the YouTube page, or just share the videos, it's deeply appreciated. And I am going to ask for more suggestions for Is It the Lit RPG segment. Like I say, I'm always on the lookout for that. But I also would like you to give me some suggestions for what else have they done. I've got quite a few. So, hit me with some, smaller authors who, like for example, R.R. Verdi. As soon as he gets his stuff out, I'm going to have, a talk about his urban fantasy novel, as soon as it comes out on audiobook compared to his other book, The Goblin King. So, people who have a few other things out there, if you've got a couple books that you think I should look at, please don't hesitate to give me a suggestion. I really do appreciate all the help and the feedback. Just remember, you can always follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. I think that's what you do at the hospital. You get a Stitcher when you get cut. Anyway, for the LitRPG Audiobook Podcast, I'm Ray, and keep listening.